King Charles did something quietly powerful this week, and the timing was impossible to ignore. At a moment when headlines were swirling, tensions were high, and Prince Harry had just taken yet another brave step in his long fight for accountability, the King chose to speak, not about controversy, not about conflict, but about purpose, about service, about young people. And perhaps without intending to, he also highlighted just how closely his values still mirror those of the son who chose a different path. Prince Harry's recent return to the UK was not wrapped in tradition or ceremony. There were no carriages, no balcony waves, no polite applause. Instead, he walked into the Royal Courts of Justice, a space that represents challenge rather than comfort. He stood there to give a witness statement in his lawsuit against a powerful media publisher, a fight that has come to symbolize far more than tabloid misconduct. For Harry, this is about changing a system that he believes caused real, lasting harm, not only to him, but to countless others who never had a platform to speak back. That distinction matters. Harry was not there to relive the past for attention. He was there because accountability matters to him, because silence for him is no longer an option. And that conviction has been a defining thread of his life with Meghan. Together they have chosen transparency over tradition, integrity over image, and that choice has never been easy. Almost as soon as Harry returned home to the United States, another issue surfaced, this time on the world stage. Loose comments were made questioning the value of NATO allies, including the UK, remarks that brushed past decades of shared sacrifice as if they were footnotes rather than human lives. For many, it was political noise. For Harry, it was personal. Nearly 500 British service members lost their lives during the Afghanistan mission. Thousands more returned home with physical and emotional scars that would shape the rest of their lives. Harry was there. He served on the ground. He wore the uniform. He knew the names, the faces, the realities behind the statistics. So when he responded, he did not do so with outrage or theatrics. He spoke with clarity and respect, reminding the world that these sacrifices were real, permanent, and deserving of acknowledgement. It was a moment that cut through the noise. And while King Charles, as monarch, cannot enter political debate, he is still the Commander-in-Chief of the British Armed Forces. It is widely understood that Harry's response did not go unnoticed. In fact, it was appreciated, because at its core it was not political at all. It was about honouring service, something Charles himself has spent a lifetime doing in his own way. Then came the King's message. In a recorded video marking the 50th anniversary of the King's Trust, formerly the Prince's Trust, Charles reflected on a journey that began in 1976 with something remarkably simple. He used his severance pay from the Navy to create an organisation focused on helping young people who were struggling, overlooked, or simply needed someone to believe in them. No one at the time could have predicted what that small step would grow into, least of all Charles himself. In his message, the King admitted that he could never have imagined the scale of the impact. What began as a modest effort has now supported more than 1.3 million young people. That number alone is staggering, but it becomes even more meaningful when you consider what it represents: confidence restored, education continued, sustainable jobs secured, and in the UK alone, more than 92,000 young people supported in starting their own businesses. That is not symbolic charity. That is tangible change. That is the difference between someone feeling invisible and someone realizing their potential. What makes this moment especially compelling is how clearly it echoes the work Prince Harry and Meghan are doing today. Strip away the titles, the controversy, the relentless commentary, and what remains is a shared belief in empowerment. Harry's work with the Invictus Games has transformed how wounded veterans are seen, not as broken, but as resilient, capable, and strong. Meghan's advocacy around mental health, equity and community support has consistently focused on giving people a voice, especially those who are often ignored. There is a quiet irony here. The same media outlets that thrive on framing this family as fractured rarely pause to acknowledge how aligned their values truly are. The methods may differ, the platforms may be worlds apart, but the foundation is strikingly similar: service, compassion, long-term impact. King Charles spoke about how the challenges young people face will continue to evolve, but their spirit and resilience remain constant. Harry has lived that truth, both in uniform and beyond it. Meghan has embodied it by refusing to shrink, by choosing empathy even when it was not extended to her. Together, they have shown that stepping away from an institution does not mean stepping away from service. And let's be honest, there is something almost refreshing about how unglamorous real impact tends to be. It is not loud, it does not trend for long, it does not always photograph well. It looks like consistency. It looks like showing up again and again. It looks like funding a youth program, defending fallen soldiers, or quietly building community support far from palace gates. This moment does not erase past tensions, and it does not pretend that everything is healed. But it does remind us that families, like nations, are complicated. That alignment can exist even when relationships are strained. That respect can survive distance. And that meaningful change often happens away from the spotlight. In a world addicted to outrage, this was a story about continuity. A king reflecting on decades of service. A son standing firm in his principles. A couple building a life centered on purpose rather than permission. That is not a narrative of division, it is a narrative of evolution. And that is why this story deserves attention. If you value thoughtful, balanced conversations like this and want to help Sussex voices continue to grow, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep this space independent and focused on substance over sensation. You can also buy me a coffee or use Super Thanks to directly support the channel. Every contribution truly makes a difference. I would love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below. What stood out to you most, Harry's defence of service members, the legacy of the King's trust, or the quiet parallels between generations? Thank you for listening, thank you for supporting, and thank you for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next episode of Sussex Voices.